true resilience. Toxic resilience is productivity at all costs, a mind over matter mindset, and what many of us think of as true resilience is in fact toxic resilience. We are taught from a very young age that dealing with discomfort and being okay with discomfort is what resilience is all about. And I am here to debunk that because absolutely not. Resilience is our innate biological ability, but it also needs rest and recovery. It is not meant to be toxic.
But being resilient, is that a good thing in your view? Being a resilient person?
Being
Not in the biological
resilient
context. I mean, being psychologically resilient.
Being resilient is an excellent thing to be. It is something that we can learn how to be better at. And yes, true resilience is wonderful. The challenge right now is that many of us hear the word resilience and we bristle at it. I do. When I hear, the messaging of toxic resilience, no one calls it toxic resilience when they're giving you that messaging. They just say, hey, it's a resilience. It's cringeworthy, right? Like you hear it like, oh, be more resilient. And so, yes, true resilience is a gift. It is our innate biological ability. We all have the power and the aptitude for true resilience. But toxic resilience is what we often see and what is often promoted. And that is something that needs to stop.
Do you think people are getting more or less resilient with the nature of the way that the world is? I often have the conversation about whether, the boomer generation are more or less resilient than the Gen Z or whatever's coming next. What's next? Is it like Alpha? I think it's Generation Alpha. These new generations. And the stereotypical argument is that because the boomer generation were working in factories and mines and they were doing harder labor and they had less comparison because they didn't have social media and they didn't see, their mate down the road having a choco-froco latte yata during their lunch break and doing yoga sessions or whatever, then they are more resilient. And the Gen Zs, they got it easy. They're all doing breath work and yoga for 6 hours a day. Is that true?
I would say no, because we know that with Gen Z and other younger populations, we're seeing a rise in mental health, burnout, stress like we've never seen before. And I don't think it's because they're quote unquote less resilient. They are managing lots and lots of onslaughts. They've lived through something really awful. They've had a sense of collective trauma. Their minds are still young. They haven't had that lived experience of, decades of going through stuff. So no, I don't think so. And of course, the older generation is going to say that. I remember when I was in my medical training, people would say, 80 hours, it's all you're working? Because we worked 120 hours because there was some reform in terms of like how many hours we could work as medical residents. And 80 hours felt awful to me. And so I think it's important to validate and normalize people's difficult experience. And it's not about what happened to you, so in this example about prior generations, it's about helping people feel a sense of validation, because if you need to name it to tame it. And so, for example, when you are going through a difficult experience, like a young person, there's such a rise of anxiety, depression, stress-related conditions, sleep disorders, mental health challenges, physical health challenges in the younger population. It's not because they're not resilient. It's because they're living in a hyper-connected world, and that is causing all sorts of issues down the road for them, both mental health and physical health. So I reject this idea that the older generation was more resilient. They had less stimulation, and they had, different challenges. But I think it's important to normalize and validate the difficult experience that people are having.
I want to go through your book now, which is called The 5 Resets, which is released January 2024. Very exciting. Which really aims to take on how we deal with stress, how we manage stress. There's sort of shades of neuroplasticity and how we can change our responses to stress. But I guess this first question about the canary in the coal mine, why did you write about that? What's that got to do with stress?
It has everything to do with stress, because stress is something that is so individualized. And that's something that we were talking about earlier, right? Like some people who feel a sense of stress have physical manifestations. Like I had palpitations, you had palpitations, someone else might have headaches, neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, GI upset, gastrointestinal issues, dizziness, fatigue, sleep problems, irritability, anger. The list goes on and on. It's like never-ending list. And The canary in the coal mine is my way of, personally, it's my way of really explaining this idea of the physical manifestations of stress. So my canary in the coal mine was palpitations. Back
What is that phrase? I've never heard the phrase "the canary in the coal mine." Well, I've heard the phrase before, but I've just kind of been one of those people that pretends they know what it means.
The canary in the coal mine is a historical reference. Back when there were coal miners, they would bring a canary, a bird, down into the mines with them. The bird would sing its canary song. When the air got bad, the workers were just working, right? Like 12-hour days and continued to work. When the air got bad, the canary would stop singing. They were in their mode. They didn't understand, they weren't paying attention. And when the canary stopped singing, that was the first tell that the air is bad, before any physical or mental health ramifications for the workers. And so the coal miners, when they stopped hearing the canary song, they would leave the mine with the canary, and it was the first tell of something going awry. And so everyone has a canary within them that tells them a signal, a song that is telling them that there is something happening with their stress. I didn't pay attention to it.